What's up guys, my name is Nadia. I am here today with my boyfriend Eddie. He's gonna put me through a leg workout. Today we are focusing on hamstrings and glutes. Mostly I focus on hamstrings and glutes, but today is more of an isolateral focus, so you're gonna see a lot of single leg exercises. So I just warmed up. We're gonna get into a single leg hamstring curl, Bulgarian split squats, other movements will take you along with us. So I always like to do a seated hamstring curl over a lying hamstring curl because I find that sometimes as I get further fatigued, it's easier for me to continue carrying out reps when I'm locked into this machine rather than being able to have the possibility of using my hips, my lower back in a lying hamstring curl. So I like to be locked in. I can use this to hold myself and brace myself down, and that way I just find that I'm able to better connect to the muscle and I'm able to isolate my hamstrings more by being locked into the seat. Being able to control this movement is huge too, because if you're just swinging through this, you're not going to be as effective. Being able to control both the lengthening portion of the movement and the shortening portion of the movement where the muscle is contracted is when you're going to get the most out of this exercise. So being able to not just swing, this isn't a rocking chair, control the movement, take your time, spend time in the contracted position, don't just swing there and go right back up. Right now I'm just logging my sets between lifts. So we just finished up the single leg curl. I was able to add, well, let's see, I think I used that machine last week. So just slightly different load variation between the two machines, but same concept. So I'm just recording that I was able to get an additional 2 reps this week compared to last week. That is a form of progressive overload. And the goal right now, as I'm in a deficit, I'm in contest prep, I'm getting ready for a show in a couple months. The goal right now is to not have strength plummeting. We want to continue to maintain markers within our performance and keep performance intact and training progression intact as we continue throughout the deficit, so that I can make sure that I don't show up on stage like a string bean. A lot of people have a misconception that as they get into a deficit, they think that all of a sudden they're gonna lose all their strength and they suddenly need to just up volume, start doing 20, 30 reps of exercises. But the better that you can keep intensity intact, the better you're going to show up on the day of your show, the better you can be able to hold onto that muscle as you continue throughout your deficit. I always like to feel this movement out without weight first, just to get warm. Even though my hamstrings are warm, my glutes are warm, I just want to make sure that nothing feels off, my knees feel good. I'm ready for this movement with a load. And I like this movement so much because it's very customizable to whether or not you want to target glutes, hamstrings, or your quads. So I have my knee and my heel in line with one another so I could get the deepest stretch possible in my glutes and my hamstrings. Whereas if I let my knee hover over the middle of my foot a bit more, that lengthens the quad a bit more, and my knee is forced to hinge a bit more on the way up, contracting the quad some more. Just like if you're doing a regular walking lunge, if you sit back with your hips a little bit more, you can get a deeper stretch in your glutes and hamstrings. Or if you lunge forward into your knee, lengthen the quad some more, you can get more of a quad focus. So I like to target glutes and hamstrings in this movement. So I'm gonna make sure that my heel is in line with my knee. I'm not pushing my knee past my toes, not too far, because I want to get the most out of that glute ham engagement. And I also like to just lean a little bit, close my hip angle a little bit into the movement, again, to further that stretch in my glutes and hams. It's also important to keep your hips in line in this movement, like just naturally standing here balance-wise, I'm gonna rotate my hips to make it a little bit easier, but it's important to shift your hips so they are tracking in the same direction and to not further any postural or muscular imbalances. So I always like to check myself. Luckily, I've got a mirror right in front of me, so I like to check myself before I descend into the stretch of this movement. If I notice I'm crooked, I'll just shift in position and then I'll come down and into my reps. In my warm-ups, I'm not necessarily going to failure because I don't want to take away from the strength I can give to my top sets, to my working sets. Today, in both my seated ham curl and this movement, I'm only doing 1 top set. So I wanna make sure that I'm warmed up, but I'm not giving too much energy to my warm-up sets that I'm taking away from the potential exertion I can give to my top sets. So I wanna make the most out of those.
All right, while she is catching her breath from that set, you'll notice while she drives down, She's putting all her pressure on her heel, not necessarily lifting the toes off the ground, but just putting the majority of pressure through the heel and driving the hips back as opposed to straight down. So what this is going to do is apply more pressure to the quad and or to apply more pressure to the glute and the hamstring, and then also spending more time down there on that 2-second hold is putting more tension directly on the area where we're trying to work, which is glutes and hamstrings.
This is actually a pretty helpful tip. If you are struggling to get into position for this movement, find a prop human, secure a solid grip for stability, and to keep your weight steady, I'm propping it against my non-working leg as I kick my non-working leg back, prop it up against, I'm using the hamstring curl right now, a Smith machine, a bench, but I just rest that weight on that non-working leg to get situated and set up in a position here. Okay, same thing here.
1, 2.
I love this movement because, again, whether you're using a wedge, wherever you have your feet placed, like you can get a really good quad workout. Like you can get a really good overall like squat out of this, but I like the hip hinge I'm able to customize with this. So even though it looks like I'm sitting really far back, it looks like you might look at it and see like, does her lower back hurt after that? No, I'm purposely sitting my hips back into this movement to, again, stretch my hamstrings, stretch my glutes, get them into that maximally stretched position so that I'm engaging them as best as I can and trying to recruit the quads as little as possible. So you can do compound movements like this and grow your glutes and your hamstrings if you're able to customize them however you need to for your liking, whether you're someone like Eddie or someone who wants to get more of a quad focus out of this exercise, or if you're like me trying to target more glutes and hams. It's very easy to make it your own and to make it fit whatever avenue you're trying to travel to within your physique goals. So again, hip hinge, a lot of glute hamstring focus.
Another thing you guys will notice is that we are loading the top of this machine here. If you have this machine at your gym or something similar to where you have a multi-load area, if you're trying to work more glutes and hamstrings, you're going to load the top, which is going to put more of the load and more tension in the hamstrings. And if you're looking to work more quads or just to have like an overall basic squat, you would load the bottom for more tension at the top. Or you can load it evenly to put more overall tension throughout the whole movement.
Reverse hyperextensions. So we're doing these for glute ham focus again, but I'm going to try and hold the contraction position for just an extra second or two. So I'm going to really control the negative and then explosive contraction with a 2-second hold at the top. I got about like 10, 11 reps with that 2-second hold at the top, and then once I couldn't manage that hold anymore, I just did partials until I basically failed. So just wanted to reach mechanical failure there. Added a band for some increased tension at the top of the movement in the contraction, so there's more tension in that shortened position. Because sometimes with these machines, even though you can get a really good contraction, that load will drop off at the end. So just adding a moderate resistance band so that I can get more tension up there. So we are just finishing off with a glute ham tricep. We are doing a single leg press, a single leg dumbbell RDL, and we're going to be doing single leg step ups onto a platform little box that Eddie's setting up right now. I'm already very warm at this point. This is the end of my workout. This is my last exercise or group of exercises. Like I said, we're doing a tricep, so I'm going to do 2 working sets of 12 to 15 reps for these, trying to making those 12 to 15 reps as challenging as possible. Then after that, we'll call it a day. So for these, I used to do these with my weight in my same hand as my non-working leg. So if I'm using my right leg for the hip extension, I'm using my left leg to hold, or my left hand to hold the weight. Except I recently started doing these a little bit differently, where I would carry the load in the same hand as my working leg. And doing that, it's much, much harder to balance. So I've gone back and just stripped any weight from this exercise. I'm using just my body weight and even something to help myself balance. But using that load in the same hand, I'm still gonna pretend like I'm holding a weight with this same hand, but just trying to regain balance and the stability, making my glutes fire entirely throughout both my left and my right side to keep me stable, because it's easy to let the hips shift back. Same in those Bulgarian split squats. We want to be nice and straight and even in our hips. So just making sure that I'm taking my time here, maintaining good balance, getting a really good extension of the hips, good drive through the glutes and hamstrings. I always like to remind people that might have trouble feeling their hamstrings in an RDL or any kind of movement like this, as if you're scooting in a chair at a table. You want to drive with your hips. The motion alone of lifting yourself back up doesn't come from lifting your chest up, it comes from your hips pushing forward. So if you were to just touch your knee right now and just squeeze your glutes, your upper body comes up a little bit. Rather than lifting your head, lifting your chest, doing essentially a lower back hyperextension, think of just driving your hips forward. That alone is going to get your upper body, your chest up. So try that if you're having trouble engaging your glutes and hamstrings in an RDL or a single leg RDL like this. That's what I like to keep in mind. Essentially, this is a little bit of a hip hinge too.
Yeah.
Because instead of pressing straight up and straight down, I start with a closed hip angle, push my hips up and forward.
Nine. 10. 3. Almost.
Left glute is good.
Good. Last one. Yes. Drive. Good. That's the side usually a little bit more fatigue. That's it.
That's it. That's a wrap. So that was my leg day B, as I call it, more isometric focus, single leg exercises. Still doing a lot of our primary movements as we would on our normal traditional leg day. Still focusing on compound movements, but just breaking them up into single body parts or single leg exercises, glute and ham focus. And again, there is room to do this same workout, but with more of a quad focus if you wanted to do something like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for following along, and we'll see you in the next one.